Alrighty, let me get it shared with everybody now that we're live. Good morning, everybody. Alrighty, I'm going to take a look at the data in a couple minutes. Just getting my bearings really quick while everybody joins up, letting the coffee kick in. Do apologize if my voice sounds a little ragged today. I have been sick, so we will get through it though. Okay, I want to go over the daily time frame first, just because yesterday I did not get a chance to make a video. And so I want to get my own bearings on everything really quick. So we have the 5 mile currently at 684.82. Market closed at 686.29. Should pull up towards the 685.50-ish range, give or take. Good morning. So the 5 mile is basically at that 685.40-ish range today, give or take. So pre-market below the 5 mile slightly. We do have bearish structure here as well. Turn off the moving averages and Bollingers for a second. Look at our drawings. So this is that channel we had yesterday, that buying channel that we were looking for to break. It did break, and potentially we could be seeing some support here. Now, I really don't think that's the case. Just the channel alone seems to not be holding a lot of weight. In fact, I'm going to extend this channel to this range and really just fully capture it. Reason why I'm doing that, so that when we set up a scalp today, we actually have a buying channel established. So, um, we know that if we break below this channel, then very, very likely we will be continuing downward. Now we do have small head and shoulders going here, and this is just a 5-minute time frame, so don't put a ton of weight into it. I just want to mark that just to have it marked for later. And we did have our sell-off yesterday in the end. Was a little tricky, but we did get it. Hopefully many of you were able to profit on some puts up there. I want to take a look at IWM really quick, and then we will go over the FX pairings and all that good stuff. I could find it. I don't know why IWM is just that one symbol I could never find. Okay, so yesterday we pretty much bought the top off. Um, Again, right in this circle area is where we were buying puts. Had the sell-off, have continuation of that sell-off, and now, again, we do have an additional head and shoulders type liquidity building here on IWM. So likelihood is very, very, very likely we work to secure that range. And from that range, we head to the 253 and see continuation within our puts. So that should be still going very, very well. Now in Exxon, I am shorting this. Does not look good. Um, Again, I'm kind of expecting the taco trade on Exxon and the whole Iran conflict. Um, I know that I'm in the minority on that. I know that pretty much all the betting sites and everything have it around what 85 to 95% that we will be having a conflict. So, um, I'm not exactly in the good boat on this one, but I don't like betting on war, so um, I'm betting against it. And let me go ahead and start looking over. So Bitcoin, again, kind of same sentiment as we had yesterday. As long as it's continuing to sell off and it's starting to head downward to close that inverse cup, that very large one to the 65 range. Very, very likely equities will be following a lot of what Bitcoin is doing, even though Bitcoin and equities don't really share any real correlation other than the fact that they're just both institutionally held. So I do look for what Bitcoin is doing because generally it will tend to tell us almost exactly what equities will be doing as well. So with this selling structure on Bitcoin, obviously with some of the selling we're seeing in pre-market, it is alluding to the continuation of that selling. The HIG is still very strong, which very, very likely tells us that a lot of these sellers are, again, not domestic sellers, that they're very likely foreign sellers, which does kind of tie hand in hand with, you know, very likely this selling does come from the Bank of Japan rather than, um, our domestic investors. So the reason why I bring that up is because it's very, very confusing when we see, quote unquote selling occurring and bearish conditions happening, but yet we're seeing our, top end credits still being very, very strong. Um, it tends to show a signal that a lot of the selling could be bought up, but it's also showing that they're trying to sell into a strong market, into buyers, which is really why I do think that it is the Bank of Japan. All the signals are kind of telling us that. So that leaves us in a position where we have bearish conditions with, bullish buyers. Makes it very hard in terms of trying to actually have any form of breakout, and we've been seeing that within the SPY. Don't like showing this channel on the daily time frame, but I don't really have a choice. As you can see on this daily time frame, we've been within this consolidation, since November, truly since, October, but we did have a little bit of a break from that in November, but truly this range has been held since, October. Haven't really broken any new ground, haven't really lost any new ground. It's just been consistent buying upward, selling down, buying upward, selling down, buying upward, selling down. And we see that in the USD JPY. Most exactly. know, Buying upward, selling down, buying upward, selling down, buying upward, selling down. So a lot of that is correlating exactly. Now our SOX S calls should be doing very well. Obviously, with a lot of this bearishness occurring, these should be extremely good. Now, this example, I believe I was talking about buying and selling ranges of how to determine strikes because when you have some of these ETFs or these leveraged ETFs that are in between strikes, for example, SOXS, this is the bear ETF for semiconductors. We have all of our strikes either at the 1.5 or at the $2 range. So this middle ground is, pretty much the battleground between which strike the market is trying to go for. Now, with us still being, and I want to box here, with us still being technically within the selling range, continuing to sell offward, it makes it so even though there's bearish conditions, buying puts allows you to, as long as you're buying the puts above this strike, it allows you to collect premium on that range. Same thing happens with the calls, as long as you're below the $1.5 strike. So all of our 1.5 calls are going to be gaining this premium inside this battle range. The risk isn't very large because having our strikes go out of the money is almost impossible, but having them go in the money is, extremely high. So, I've been really liking these contracts. A lot of different symbols that I try to play will have setups like this where we can have sort of that, battleground of, you know, high reward with low risk. So, sorry if today I sound tired. I've still been sick, and yesterday I was moving a ton of stuff around the office. So, kind of exhausted right now. So I have about 45 minutes until market open. Not really looking at scalps just yet. I generally try to identify my scalps around 15 to 20 minutes before start of the market. This is consolidation range for assuming I just had this set for scalp or something on QQQ. But we did break this consolidation range, which is somewhat telling. Okay, so again, kind of just going over all the signals on the day. I am seeing bearishness. Um, Looking at the data, let's see what we got going on. It won't show on your screen, I apologize. We had the 20-year bond auction come in yesterday. Uh, Much less yield, which is, a good thing for TLT and treasuries overall. The 20-year bond auction came in at a 4.6% yield rather than the 4.8. So very good auction. Anything else super important? A lot of housing starts. We had the continuing and initial jobless claims come in today. Continuing claims were slightly higher, but the initial claims were slightly lower, but still very elevated. As long as it's above that 180,000 a week, then that's, extremely concerning, especially when we're literally not hiring on top of it. So, the ADP has been showing us this. So in terms of data, we don't really have anything too major left for today. We have Kashkari speaking in 10 minutes. Not too worried about what he has to say. He's usually hawkish overall. Um, but again, I'm just not worried about that right now. Atlanta Fed GDP at 10 a.m. with the US leading index and pending home sales. So, really not too much data for today. Major data sets come in tomorrow when we have the PCE, GDP, and all that good stuff. All right, so not a whole lot of data today, not a whole lot of sentiment to shift market direction a whole lot. So that's really what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the data. Bitcoin is bearish. The dollar has been, bouncing off the bottom of this buying channel or of this selling channel. This is, a bearish thing for equities currently. It is very elevated still. We did have the dollar start pulling down all the way to the 95 range. With it being close to this 98 range, it is starting to become elevated again. With it being elevated, it does create bearish conditions. FXY, we're not seeing super strong buying yet. Um, I'm just looking at this. So we did open some FXY calls yesterday, and those were for, hold on, I want to say they're for 120 something days out. I just want to be 100% sure on it. Yeah, so we have the 62 calls for 120 something days out. Now, we're looking for the $60 range in FXY, okay? And the reason why we're looking for that $60 range is because this is what is or what the Bank of Japan has been doing. They've been unwinding their positions to strengthen the yen. Okay, so the FXY is the yen. Every time they have been having to unwind positions, sell securities, sell equities, all that good stuff, the yen pulls up towards that 65 range, which would pull us in the money by a whole $6, $5, $6. So very good contract, and they are very cheap. So I do like that position a lot. And with where, everything is positioned in the markets and the narrative and everything, it's extremely likely we see this unwinding occur. So I am looking for that. I am positioned for this in the FXY. Um, Pretty soon here, we are going to start positioning within the SPY and Tech for some longer dated puts, but not yet. Looking for, a little bit more confirmation before we really start engaging on the long-term bearish positions. Again, we do have our corporate high yield credit still very strong, so this is a bullish signal for the market, even though we're seeing, some bearish signals occurring. Free regional bank ETF, seeing a little bit of selling. You do see a lot of correlation with CRE slash DPST and with actual buying and selling in the market. So with some selling occurring in DPST currently, or within CRE, seeing the ADL pulling downward on the daily time frame, this can be alluding to some selling picking up within equities as well. Liquid, it's still holding a pretty strong range. And you can see this exact consolidation range that I was talking about within the SPY. Um, it's sitting right here perfectly. So we're going to put a box on that. And we can actually see something really interesting here is that this goes back all the way to August 2025. Okay, so correlating that with the SPY very, very quickly. See, is there a way I could do a dual chart on here? I know there is, but I just have not played around with it. Anyway, the correlation between SPY and liquid is extremely strong because this is the investment grade corporate bond ETF. So this is checking basically the highest echelon of bonds you can get in terms of from corporate. for corporations, I mean. Um, Seeing this starting to pick up its buying very, very heavily can be a rather bullish signal overall, even though conditions within the SPY aren't exactly the best right now, and there's that major consolidation range. I will be deleting this yellow channel later. I apologize, I can't really hide it for the daily time frame. This is going to be used for our scalp today. But this is showing that exact consolidation range within liquid as well. All except within liquid, excuse me, we're seeing it pull upward rather than some of this price action in the SPY where we're seeing it potentially become bearish. So that can be a telling indicator that potentially a lot of this bearishness can be filled. We can't see a lot of buying throughout this bearishness. QQ continuing its bearish structure downward. That was used for scalp, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that channel. We're getting our move downward like we expected, so going to delete that. But really what we're looking for here is we have this inverse cup. And with that inverse cup, we do have an inverse handle occurring. With the inverse handle occurring and really completed, now we're trying to have an inverse handle create on this nested inverse cup so that we can continue pushing downward. Excuse me. Very, very likely. Again, QQQ should be looking for that 580 range. Um, that is a whole basically $23 off of where we're at right now. So the downside is very significant if dealers really want to aim for it. A lot of the liquidity and everything is really set to do so. Hide the drawings here for a moment. Within semiconductors, we're seeing a little bit of that major bullishness that we're seeing within liquid. That same consolidation range here does not look the same. As you can see, it's actually not a consolidation range here. It's just pure buying. Bullish structure continuing right there. See what we got going on. Okay, so this is what we were talking about yesterday, I believe, where we were really expecting this head and shoulders to play out. The alternative was that there was going to be continuation within this cup and handle to the upside, and that we were going to refill this cup all the way back up to that 365. Now, it doesn't seem like that's occurring. It does seem like that this bearish structure is playing out. So, with that said, our expectations are now set towards that 345 range. I know it looks ugly, but that's really what we should be expecting out of semiconductors, especially with this continuation of the bearish structure. We do have this very large inverse cup right here. From that inverse cup, we have a head and shoulders, which is very, very likely indicative of a inverse cup. Okay, which would be the handle of that larger inverse cup. Good morning, everybody. We'll take a look at TLT in just a moment. Give me just one moment to mute just so I can drink some coffee really quick because my throat is all scratchy. Okay, sorry about that. For TLT, I have 70 or not 72, 92 straight calls for March, say March 16th, whatever it is. Hold on. Let me flip. Good old TLT here. Okay. TLT, and we're going to turn off all the drawings, even though they're very, very important here. There's just a lot going on that I don't really need everybody to focus on just yet. I want to take a look at it. First, one moment. This is the weekly time frame. I know it looks like an absolute disaster. However, there is a method to my madness here. Okay. I do need to reset some of these channels really quick due to the dividends, so I'm not just randomly or arbitrarily changing channels. Okay. The red circles here on the weekly time frame are showing lower Bollinger moves. Lower Bollinger moves generally create very, very strong buys towards the upside. This daily time frame, as you can see, that lower Bollinger move created a very strong buy to the upside. Now, with that buy towards the upside, going to turn off all these messy drawings. We pushed into the daily upper Bollinger. Okay. With us pushing into this daily upper Bollinger, we did anticipate a slight pullback. Sorry, it's hard to talk right now. I'm not feeling the best, but we will get through it. Um, from the upper Bollinger move, okay, we have upper Bollinger day one. This looks like day one right here. Only except it pushed into the upper Bollinger, but did not close at the upper Bollinger. So this was a rejection of the upper Bollinger. So day one started here. We went up to the 89.70. Day two had the higher high, and now we're seeing the consolidation down to the 5 mile. Okay. With TLT having sat within this 20-mile range for an extremely long time, it's still telling me that technically, if we're going to be seeing the Bank of Japan unwinding, if we're going to be seeing some of the bearish conditions that are present actually, finish out and continue, then very, very likely we will continue to see the buying to the upside, even with this extension in the daily time frame. Very likely you're going to see a lot of this testing the 5 mile, head back up to the upper Bollinger, test 5 mile, head back up to the upper Bollinger, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Now, a little hesitant to tell people to take calls. Um, the reason why is because back in 2025, we had this very strong cup here, okay? And from that very strong cup, we had all of the structure that we were really looking for a breakout. And I do need to pull up the drawings for this again. So I apologize for all the mess, but try to bear with me. So we have this larger cup here. This cup completed. Okay, that's very good. We were looking for that. From that larger cup, we have the bearish structure at the top of the handle to create the handle downward. This is what we look for in every single cup and handle. So that occurred. I'm actually going to make this circle here. Let's make it purple so that everybody can follow along really easily. We'll do red. Okay. So big red circle. We had our bearish structure at the top of the cup handle, exactly what we anticipated. We're now seeing our bullish structure at the bottom of this cup handle, exactly what we're anticipating. So where do we go from here? Okay. Now we work on completing this handle. Okay, this handle is now turning into a nested cup. And I'm going to redraw this. But now we're looking for our move back up to the 90.82. From that 90.82 and with us being in this consolidation range, we should expect a pull downward. From that pull downward, should be working on breaking out. Okay. Again, a lot of the conditions with within TLT are really indicative that this is going to be occurring. Um, with that said, when is it a good time to buy? Because obviously, um, you know, the bottom Bollinger is always the time to buy, and with the bottom Bollinger, those moves happened already. We don't If we didn't have contracts at the time, then, kind of too late. So we need to either wait for these 5 mod tests to the upside or the 20 mod. Now, again, we have tested the 20 mod very, very thoroughly. Uh, you know, as you can see, we've been all over. It's not like silver, and I just want to show an example here, where during the rally, you didn't even head to the 20 mod at all. From the buying when we really took off, it was just upper Bollinger, 5 mile, upper Bollinger, 5 mile, upper Bollinger, 5 mile, upper Bollinger, 5 mile, upper Bollinger, 5 mile. And I really want to make this point because when you're seeing bullish action, you're really expecting this. Okay. Now, granted, it doesn't always look like this, but the majority of major buying into a symbol is going to share a lot of these same sentiments. You're going to see this push to the upper Bollinger, pull down the 5 mile, consolidate, push up to the upper Bollinger, pull back down, and not a lot of this deeper support testing. This deeper support testing is indicative of consolidation. Now, consolidation can create buying again to the upside, but just showing that example of what we're really looking for. Now, we're starting to see this within TLT, okay? Only starting though, okay? It's not anything major yet, but again, this is how you get that major move to the upside. You have to start somewhere. So we're starting to see that exact pattern occur. Push up to the upper Bollinger, pull down the 5 mile, push up to the upper Bollinger, pull down the 5 mile, potentially again, push up to the upper Bollinger, pull down the 5 mile. So the conditions are very good to be entering calls. It's just again, try to really aim for that 5 mile, or if we're lucky, we can see if we can get that 20 mile, but don't really expect the 20 mile at this point if we're really going to be seeing the buying that we're expecting. Good morning, good morning. Alrighty, so we have 23 minutes until open. I'm going to find us a nice scalp on the day, but I am going to AFK for about 2 minutes just because I need to drink a little coffee really quick before we jump into this. Um, and yeah, we'll go over what I'm looking for a scalp, how to enter, how to exit, and all that good stuff. So I'll be right back, everybody. All right, and I am back. Okay, so what we're looking for, just very quickly, again, we want to identify the trend on the day, what we always start with, and I'm just kind of walking through kind of exactly how I scalp. So DXY, we see it elevated. This is bearish. Bitcoin is dropping. Again, there is a lot of correlations with Bitcoin and overall equities. So this is bearish. If we lose a major level here, then very, very likely that's going to be, showing us that equities will follow. Let's check the yen. The yen is not really seeing any major buying or selling in the pre-market yet, but we do want to see this pulling upward. That will be a signal of uh, bearishness overall. With it pulling downward, that's really not a signal of bullishness. If it starts really pushing downward, then that can be um, short-term bullishness, but overall bearishness because again, the Bank of Japan will need to unwind positions if the yen drops low enough. So overall, not bearish or bullish, but in between. The HIG, not seeing major selling yet, so not exactly bearish. Overall, sort of bullish in terms of the structure on the daily time frame. We haven't been seeing major selling yet. We've been seeing a lot of buying, and we see that within liquid as well. So our upper corporate credit is holding very strong. With liquid being at this upper Bollinger, it can pull downward quite a bit. So just be aware of that. The upper Bollinger move does create conditions for bearishness. With liquid being in, that somewhat bearish position, that can show that there can be bearishness within the rest of equities. So just be aware of that. NVIDIA, bullish structure. We see from the lower Bollinger, we do have the breakout, do have this cup and handle structure occurring, but again, if we do not see the push above this 193 range, then that can turn into a larger head and shoulders. So we'll be watching for that. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is doing very well. We talked about how once we're at that 20 mile range or under the 20 mile range, it becomes an extremely strong buy. We are seeing that starting to occur. We did pull down all the way to the 48.50, and from that, we're back up to the 5,000, so that's very good. Everybody's gold and silver positions should be up. I know that we talked about buying silver a few days ago back at the 65 50ish range. So everybody's shares should be up at least $4 to $5. Seeing continuation within success for our calls, so that's good. Let's check what's going on with the treasuries and the USGPY. We do want to be seeing the USD JPY pulling downward. Again, it's starting to become very elevated. With this elevated state, it does lead to the Bank of Japan having to unwind. Bank of Japan unwinding positions does mean that there will be selling within equities. We have the VVIX still extremely elevated. Again, just very, very quickly going over how that works. If it's above the 98, then that does mean that insurance premium on, excuse me, the insurance premium to insure, your future vehicles is going up. Okay, so it's a little different compared to the actual VIX. So the VVIX is monitoring actual insurance premium. So when this is rising, money is actually being spent. Okay, the VIX acts a little differently. It tracks what's on the specs. So I don't really watch the actual VIX. I watch the VVIX because it's far more indicative of movement. Again, it's above the 98. We are within that selling range. Did close at the 108 yesterday. We did have a little bit of a pull down where potentially, people thought that it could start breaking into this 98 range, but from that pull down, it began selling off again. So I do expect the VVIX to remain elevated, but this is a signal to be watching for. And with all that out of the way, now we go to our 5 minute time frame. Hide the drawings, 5 minute time frame. We open up the Bollinger Bands. Again, very, very quickly, my settings are length 20. That's tracking the 20 mile. Width is at 2. On the 5 minute time frame, we are looking for an extension above or below the lower Bollinger. So Archer, not really something I want to scalp, but this is an example. If you're pushed below that lower Bollinger, potentially that creates a position to buy calls. And so at this point, what I'm quickly doing here is just looking through my watch list to see if there's anything I'm interested in. And overall, on the day, we do see a lot of bearish conditions. So if I'm wanting to do a scalp, I do ideally want to do a scalp that's going to fit with that thesis. So for example, if I see um, tech pushing downward in some of these symbols, that doesn't exactly mean I want to buy calls on it. Um, because the rest of the day is showing bearish conditions. So that lower Bollinger move could create, um, the condition where it just continues pushing into that lower Bollinger rather than creates a quality scalp. Good morning. Good morning. A lot of bearish structure within Ethereum. Not that I care about Ethereum, but it does follow Bitcoin. So there's that. Gold could be creating an opportunity to buy the upside for a scalp. So we will circle back to that if I remember. There's a really nice head and shoulders there. IWM continuing this bearish structure. We have a very nice head and shoulders. We do see the lower Bollinger being pushed on the 5 minute time frame. That can create conditions to buy the upside. But I'm not really seeing a major push into that lower Bollinger just yet. Junk is starting some big candles downward. Cree, we see that bearish structure. Even though it's not where we want to enter anything on terms of a scalp, we do have the bearish structure there. That does fit in with the thesis of the day. We do expect selling. See this very, very nice head and shoulders on the ES main. And again, this is tracking the SPACs and the SPY. So very, very quality bearish structure there. Also alluding to that, again, we very, very likely will be selling today. Nothing's popping out too much yet. Again, we're not going to force any scalps. We only take scalps that we see our conditions present on. So again, we're looking for a push above or below the upper Bollinger or lower Bollinger, a 5 minute time frame. This would be kind of what we're looking for, that very large push below the lower Bollinger. We would take positions there, and as you can see, starting to push back up towards that middle Bollinger. So exactly the type of trade we're looking for. I don't think silver's going to be pushing down enough to scalp that, even though there obviously is some major upside in it. Um, Not really what I'm wanting to scalp in terms of data order coin. Not what I'm wanting to scalp. Again, I would want to see it pushed way lower, but we do have bullish positions within silver overall, so SPACs it's a little push, but that's yesterday's. It's not updated. Now, what I'm really expecting on the SPY today is I'm really expecting to push up slightly above this 20-mile range unless we see the upper Bollinger push down basically to this 684 range. From that, pulling downward very aggressively. Now, what we have to be careful for is again, we do have this you know, minor buying channel. This has been structured over the last 3 trading days. So if we continue to hold this channel, that would be bullish. I do expect this channel to break though. So if we see this channel break, that would be, further signal that our bearishness will very likely see continuation. UNH could be creating a scalp, but not really the type of symbol I want to scalp on. Treasury yields are doing good. USD JPY very extended. Again, this does tell me very likely we will be seeing unwinding within equities today. Exxon could be creating a buying opportunity. However, there's the whole Iran conflict, so this can be extremely news driven. I'm not able to track the whole Iran news right this second, so um, I don't want to be scalping that, but possibility is there. So, and again, if you do want to scalp that, just going over that, you'd buy a call to the upside as long as we're pushed below this lower Bollinger. Um, Again, with this lower Bollinger being pushed here, do you have to pay attention to the news? Again, this can be very news driven. If talks, break out where the conflict isn't going to start, then those calls will pretty much burn very quickly. So be aware of that if you take calls towards the upside. Again, I am shorting Exxon right now. My puts are red, so let's just get that out of the way. UNG. Okay, let's take a look at UNG. Definitely some opportunity with UNG. It is pushing a little heavy 5 minute time frame. So this is a scalp that I do see the potential in, but my conditions are a little different on it. So on the daily time frame, you have this extremely bullish cup and handle. You see a lot of chop within here, a lot of selling, but that's okay. This can create a bullish handle to the upside. We see the ADL pulling upward very, very aggressively. So buying to the upside is probably extremely, extremely good here. As again, the ADL is already starting to pull back up to when it was at $17 a share. So the momentum is absolutely there. The reason why I'm saying I don't like it as a scalp, but it is an awesome position to be taking still, is that on the 5 minute time frame, it is pushed to the upper Bollinger, which generally that's when I want a short position. Now, I don't want to be shorting this. Again, this is something where I heavily, heavily suggest buying into shares. Um, the upside looks super good here. Okay, super, super good. Um, But I would try to let this pull down in terms of the 5 minute time frame. If you do want that scalp, ideally you do want it to pull to that lower Bollinger. I don't know if we will get that opportunity though. Let's go ahead and take a look at SPY and everything now that we're getting ready to open any second. Seeing that continuation within the bearish structure, very, very likely we should reject that 20 mo. From that 20 mo rejection, very, very likely break into that buying channel we were talking about. And this is just a very micro buying channel. This has been made over the last 3 trading days. Doesn't hold a lot of weight right now, so it can be broken pretty easily. We're within an extremely strong liquidity range, and I want to turn off the Bollingers to show this, but we are within this yellow liquidity range. Now, generally, when we do enter this range, we have been buying out and bouncing upward out of it. However, with the Bank of Japan, selling or unwinding positions, all that good stuff, can see continuation into these channels. If we see continuation into those channels, then, obviously the selling will go pretty deep. Bitcoin, we're still seeing bearishness. So a lot of the bearish conditions are very present today. Not really seeing that change at all. Dollar still extremely elevated. I do want to look at the HIG and everything today, because that will be very crucial. Not really seeing major selling within the HIG, but we are starting to see some selling within liquid. We do expect some selling within liquid, which again can translate to selling throughout the rest of the equities. Now we are starting to see a lot of our tech pushing into this lower Bollinger. Again, with this lower Bollinger push, that can create bullish conditions to the upside. So I'm not wanting to scalp that in terms of buying calls. I still just see too much bearishness over the overall day to be wanting to engage on calls on the bottom. Sox here is seeing a little bit of a bounce off of that lower Bollinger on the 5 minute time frame. Till T here can create a scalp to the downside. Again, if you take that scalp though, needs to be very short. You're basically just taking the scalp from the upper Bollinger towards the middle Bollinger. Take a look at UNG again. If we can get UNG to push down to this lower Bollinger, that would be an extremely awesome scalp. So far, we're seeing a little bit of that selling, so that's good. We'll circle back around this. I want to make sure that I have this saved. My aliens watch list. Okay, so UNG is going to be an entry very soon. Just be watching for that lower Bollinger entry. Actually, we'll be taking some positions off of this, so continuing to see that bearishness within Bitcoin. Dollar continuing to rise. Circle back to the SPY. If we get this push to the upper Bollinger here, that is a very, very quality short. Just letting everybody know that. So that 684.72. Um, as long as we do not push above that 685, that's very, very good. This does create a head and shoulders here. If we pull up towards that 685, then it creates a cup. So be aware of that. I am looking at a scalp here for the SPY. So if we can get that push into the upper Bollinger, that is a very, very quality short. So I'm going to just start looking at some positions on that. Hold on. Okay, we're still getting that push upward. So with this push upward, I'm going to be targeting basically the low of the day, which would be that 683. So ideally, you do want the 683 puts. However, you can go with the 680, or between the 683 to 680, and it would be probably very, very fine. Don't take the put until we push into that upper Bollinger. And you just have to be super patient. And if we don't get our level, then we don't take the short. Simple as that. So either we secure our level or we will wait for the next entry. Take a look at QQQ as well. QQQ didn't get up to the upper Bollinger all the way, but still seeing that rejection within the head and shoulders here. Looks like we missed that one. It's by breaking our channel, so that's exactly what we're looking for in terms of that downside. Did not push all the way to the upper Bollinger, so I did not take a short off of that. But this is looking very good. Exactly what we're looking for in terms of, the short position. UNG did pull back a little bit, not all the way to our lower Bollinger just yet. But again, this is still a very strong entry. Our VVIX is extremely, extremely elevated today. So this is very, very indicative that selling will be picking up. I'm not looking to buy calls into the bottom of this. Semiconductors did exactly what I talked about, where it pulled up to that 20 mile range and rejected. So that would have been the scalp, but again, that's not what excuse me, that's not what I'm looking for in terms of gauging into a scalp. Dollar is still extremely elevated. Bitcoin continuing to sell downward. A lot of our signals are holding very strong. We are not seeing buying within the yen yet, so this isn't really super indicative of Bank of Japan unwinding. It just looks like standard selling right now. SDJPY, seeing that pull back a little bit, but still very, very elevated. We'll see this pulling back pretty aggressively when the Bank of Japan starts, um, you know, unwinding their positions. Now, potentially this can give us an extra short entry. If it pulls back up to this upper Bollinger again, it can give us that short entry all the way back down towards instead of that 683 now, it'd be down to the 682.47. So you just again target that low. Seeing some strength in semiconductors right now. Not a lot though. QQQ is still just melting. Again, if SPY pulls up to this 684.66, you'd basically pull up to that 684 80 range. If that occurs, then that becomes a very, very good short entry. We have our VVIX still extremely elevated, waiting for Exxon to pull back. One moment. All right, sorry about that. Okay. So again, we're just continuing to wait for our entries here. We're not taking calls on the bottom of this selling. I don't like the conditions to the upside. Starting to see selling within the HIG as well, so that's a major bearish signal. Let's check liquid. We are expecting liquid to pull back, so we do want to see a lot further selling within liquid. Go back to SPY. Just chopping. Now again, this is still that head and shoulders. Um, this could have been completed already, and we can be working on building a new structure by now, but I still count this as that right shoulder liquidity. So again, if we pull upward to the upper Bollinger, that is a short entry. I'm really looking forward to that, but we have not gotten it yet. Let's check QQQ. QQQ, same thing here. I don't expect the push up to the 604 though. I do expect it to be a lot closer to that 603 80-ish range if we are going to get, the buying to the upside to create that right shoulder. Again, broke our buying channel, so that's exactly the signal we're looking for. Just not wanting to chase puts here. Even though there's the room downward, I never open puts at the lower Bollinger. Swing back to the VVIX, still seeing, the insurance premiums on the VVIX continuing upward. So everything's telling us that the selling is not going to stop for today. We are getting a little bit of buying to the upside on the SPY. Again, if we can secure that 684 range, that will be a very quality short entry. So we are looking for that. The dollar is extremely elevated still. All of our signals, to enter into a short is present. So now for the SPY, again, I'm looking at basically the 683 through the 680 put contracts. There is room below that, but that's ideally not what I'm targeting within a scalp. Um, Let me see if I could find some contracts that are a little cheaper. Okay, we are getting our push upward, so this is our short entry. And I am entering in on this. Okay, and everybody should be in their shorts if they're wanting to short. And we're getting our push downward. Now again, I'm looking for the push all the way to the lower Bollinger. You can be safe and just cut at that 20 ma, but that's not what I'm looking for out of this scalp. I'm looking for basically pushing all the way into the low of the day. Swing around to the VVIX again. Still very elevated. Now, with it being in the 5-minute upper Bollinger, it can pull back a little bit, which would suggest a slight bit of bullishness within the market. Um, that bullishness wouldn't be exactly buying to the upside. It would just be, a little bit of this continuation within building this right shoulder. I'm not expecting it to fully push up to the upper Bollinger here, but again, if we do, I will be adding additional shorts into that position. As long as we don't break above basically the top of this range to create a cup to the upside, then this is still bearish structure. As long as it's bearish structure, then I like it. And if we again push into the upper Bollinger here on the 5-minute time frame, I will be taking shorts. Very, very comfortable with shorting into today. Pretty much every signal that we're looking for bearishness is present, so all right, I went ahead and opened a couple more positions. This can push upwards slightly more. Overall, we're still seeing all of the bullishness or all of the bearishness that still been, going over throughout the entirety of the morning. Dollar still very elevated. Let's check the FXY. We're starting to see a little bit of buying within the yen, but again, we want to see major buying within the yen. The HIG selling off a little bit, but not majorly. Liquid. Liquid still just holding its range. We're looking for this to pull back quite a bit today. Nvidia continuing its head and shoulders. Same with QQQ. Same with semiconductors. And looking very likely within the SPY. As long as this doesn't turn upward into a bullish cup, then that's exactly what I'm looking for the short. Everything's present for short today. Again, the VVIX is extremely, extremely elevated. Um, we would need to see this pullback, probably 8 something dollars or more, to really suggest that this is going to be calming down. Really expecting the pull downward to see this lower Bollinger expand downward quite a bit. Excuse me. Sorry if my voice is not the best right now to talk because I've been sick. QQQ, still seeing that same structure. Looking for continuation. Oil pulling upward. Hopefully everybody was able to buy some shares of UNG. Excuse me. I did add a few at the 1201, having a little bit of that pullback from the upper Bollinger within the VVIX, what we did expect and talk about. Still seeing good signals within our VVIX. Seeing a little bit of buying within Bitcoin. That can be creating some really nice short positions in Bitcoin ETFs right now. So I actually want to look at that. Let's check MicroStrategy. This is a very nice scalp right here. So hold on, I want to look at some positions on that. So the Mastix, which is the MicroStrategy uh bull ETF, you can actually get the puts extremely cheap right now for the $2 strike. If we get our move downward like we're anticipating, then we should absolutely hit that level. So, um, I like those a lot, and I am going to be adding some of them. So, alrighty, got some of those $2 puts. So we'd be looking not just for the low of the day, um, but basically continuation and breakdown of that level. So let's go back to the SPY. Now this can be a bullish cup on the 5-minute time frame, so be aware of that. Again, I'm still very bearish right now. Everything that I'm seeing is still holding bearish for me. Even with the VVIX pulling down very, very slightly, again, this is still super, super extended. Liquid just holding its weight. Big holding its weight. Bitcoin, I'm looking for Bitcoin to pull back. Seeing a little bit of a nice push within QQQ here. I did talk about how calls at the bottom could be good, but I did not want to engage on that just because of the conditions on the day. Seeing a lot of bearishness still, so I really don't want to be trying to engage calls towards the upside, even if the potential is there. We do have this cup build, so we do need to complete this head and shoulders. Now, with us pushing into this upper Bollinger, even with this bullish cup filled out, this is still a short entry, but we do just have to be a little more careful now because now it just might be a short entry to the middle Bollinger before a pull upward. So be aware of that. But again, I still like the short here. Everything about the day is still telling me that, very, very likely we will be pulling downward. Our dollar is still very elevated. Can have a good scalp here within the GBTC. As I mentioned, a lot of Bitcoin ETFs right now are within that scalp range. Semiconductors are still within that very bearish, liquidity range, but need to see continuation. Same with the SPY here. Do need to see this range below the yellow taken again if we're looking to have our shorts, pay out. BVIX still super elevated. And we have the USD JPY still very elevated. So again, every condition we're looking for um, bearishness to start picking up is extremely present. Feels like bear trap played out. Maybe it's a bear trap, but I don't think so. Just because, and again, the VVIX is super, super indicative of that. The reason why is every penny you see being pushed upward or downward is costing someone actual money. Okay, this is actual insurance premium being pushed upward and downward. So this insurance premium is going to be affecting the largest institutional buyers out there. Unlike the VIX, where you and I can go just pick up some calls or puts or go short or, long the SPY or the SPACs, not everyone can engage within the VVIX the same way. So with it being elevated the way that it is, it's telling me that real institutional money is hedging their positions. Um, they generally would not do that just to do that. Generally, they do that because they see actual selling occurring. So, overall, this is a very, very, very strong indicator that I don't expect bullishness on the day. I really do expect this to pretty much fall off a cliff pretty soon here, based off of how elevated the VVIX is. Seeing a little bit of that pullback within Bitcoin, and we want to see it pretty much pull down all the way to the low of the day. Our dollar is still super elevated. We will start seeing the dollar pulling backward or pulling back if we see the Bank of Japan start unwinding positions. So this can be a little tricky to decipher because it's like it pulling upward is a bearish condition, but at the same time, it pulling downward can also trigger a bearish condition. So, um, just pay attention to what the dollar is doing. Liquid seeing a little bit of buying to the upside. Again, we are looking for this to really fall off. A lot of consolidation in this range. Really looking for an expansion of the lower Bollinger or upper Bollinger. If things are going to get bullish, then we will be seeing the upper Bollinger expanding. Semiconductors are still pushed down very, very low. Still seeing extremely elevated IX. We do see the ADL picking up slightly. Um, Nothing really major too yet. Longer we go out on the duration, the smaller that ADL is getting. So not really seeing a whole lot of funds entering into the SPY, even though we are seeing this quote unquote bullish price action. So today could definitely be a choppy day, and one of the main reasons why is because we just simply don't have any more news for the day or any data. I mean, let me go ahead and pull this up, and it will be very white on your screen, so I apologize. Hopefully, it doesn't blind everybody. Um, I can actually pull it up correctly. Will be a little hard to see. I apologize. But all of the data for today is pretty much done. Um, Really, all we have left is the 30-year tips auction. Um, Everybody's going to be waiting for the PC and GDP data tomorrow, so today could be a very choppy day in terms of that. We don't really have data to push us one way or another, so um, that can be choppy. Now, with this extension into the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame, with all the other, bearish conditions present, I'm still adding shorts here. Okay. Um, some people might disagree with that, but that is how I trade. So the only thing I'm really concerned about on the 5-minute time frame here is that we potentially have this micro cup. But with it being the 5-minute time frame, it doesn't hold a lot of weight. This entire area is really just consolidation. So looking for the break out of this area or the breakdown. Sorry about that. I had a coughing fit for a little bit. Anyway, still just looking for continuation. I don't really expect any massive movements just yet. Again, I'm looking for semiconductors to really reject this 20 mile range on the 5-minute time frame. If it doesn't reject, if it starts buying upward and this creates a cup to the upside, then that would be very bullish for the market. Semiconductors have been basically the primary bullish thing for the market over the last few weeks. Um, so if this pushes, then it can definitely take a lot of the market weight with it. EVIX has been pulling downward since it hit the 114.54 today. So we are looking for this to start pulling upward, but with the 5-minute time frame, it's basically showing us that it can pull down to the 110. So we can still be seeing some bullish action within the market. Now, what I'm looking for here is for this handle to basically fully reject. Okay, for it to not be bullish, but rather it to turn into a bearish structure. So looking for this handle to basically reject. All the other signals we're seeing, again, I'm still seeing the bearishness kicking in. UNG still doing good. Can pull down to that lower Bollinger still. If it does, that's an even better entry, but again, I still like this range. I do have shares at the 1201. Again, the daily time frame on UNG looks super good. Um, is pulling back up towards that 17 range. Should be fully expected. Still just seeing the HIG hold its weight. Liquid a little buying, but nothing major yet. MicroStrategy, I still like the short here. Again, I took the Mastix uh, $2 puts. I'm really expecting this to pull down back towards that $2 range. Looking for QQQ to pull down towards this 20 MA and continue further downward. Looking for semiconductors to reject that 20 MA. And same thing with SPY that we saw with QQQ, looking for it to pull down into that 20 MA and start pushing towards the lower Bollinger. VVIX still extremely elevated, even though it was pulling down slightly. Our silver positions are going very well. We talked about this morning how if it pulled down to that lower Bollinger, it would be an extremely strong buy. Now, I did miss that lower Bollinger push, so sorry about that, but it would have been a super strong trade. Really looking for QQQ to pull downward from the upper Bollinger here. Same with the SPY. I am going to look up what is going on with Iran while everything is going on. We're just looking for this upper Bollinger rejection. We have our VVIX still pulling upward. It is close to that 113 range right now. We have TLT pulling upward, which that's a signal we want to see for bearishness for the market right now. Um, that doesn't always hold a correlation. It's just based on the current narrative and everything. Let's go ahead and check the DXY and FXY. We are expecting quite a quite a bit of buying within the FXY pretty soon here. We're expecting the dollar to start dropping. Dollar dropping here usually would be a bullish signal, but in the grand scheme of things, the dollar dropping here actually tells us that people are selling securities and trying to get an influx of dollars. So really looking forward for that to occur. What trades is everyone else taking today? Still just looking for our shorts, route tech. I'm still within my SPY puts on the 0DTE. Um, have not been shaken out of those yet. I'm still seeing a lot of bearishness within the day, even though we did again have this micro bullish structure complete. This can be indicative of continued bullishness, but a lot of the conditions on the day are telling me that that's not the case. Talked about this morning how TLT could have been a strong scalp to the upside. Or no, we talked about it could be a strong scalp to the downside. If we had it pull to the 20 mile or to the lower Bollinger, it did not do that, so did not give us the trade. The IX still extremely elevated. Still seeing that 20 mile rejection within semiconductors, but this can turn into buying, so just aware of that. QQQ still seeing our breakdown occur. Nvidia can be giving us an opportunity for a scalp right now to the downside. Actually, I want to take a look at some of those contracts. Again, overall, I am bearish on the day just because of all of the different conditions present right now. Now, if you want a cheap Nvidia put, you could take a NVDS call to the upside, or let's see, NVD has some nice contracts. There's $7 calls for about $5 to $10 each, so very cheap. That could be potentially a very nice trade if we do have the rejection within NVIDIA and semiconductors. Starting to see SPY reject that 20 MA. Again, we really want to see a rejection downward within this 20 MA. We don't want to see a bounce to the upside. That's if you're shorting anyway. If you're bullish, then this is a cup and handle. You would be looking for this 20 mile range to bounce to the upside if you are bullish. But overall, I am looking for the bearishness on the day, looking for the USD JPY to start pulling back. Really looking for liquid to pull down below this 111 range today. Seeing a lot of chop though. Can on these days where there's not a lot of data, we can have pretty immense chop because there's just nothing narratively to drive the market one way or another. SPY VWAP, yep. I don't show it on my computer, I should. I have it on my phone though. Indicators, VWAP. Really just looking for it to break through this 20 mile range. Bitcoin giving us 20 miles so far. Gold is doing very, very well. Our silver positions should be up quite a bit as well. Yep, doing extremely well. Just need our tech positions to work out now. Potentially that could be this 20 mile bounce here. So if this is going to be bullish on the day, if things are not going to be bearish like I'm seeing, then this could be that cup and handle bounce. So be cautious here if you're shorting. Again, though, I am shorting. I'm still holding my shorts. I do expect market to pull down. So IWM still continuing downward. Looking for SPY to really reject this level. Actual VIX is above 20, which does indicate bearishness. I do use that $20 rule in terms of the actual VIX itself, but VVIX is what I mainly watch. But we are within bearish conditions when we do have the actual VIX above $20. VVIX still super elevated, so again, I am just super set within my shorts today so far. We'd have to see a lot of different signals change for me to really um want to change what positions I have going right now. How's everybody's day going? How's your trades going? I feel like today's going to be a super boring day, honestly. Just because tomorrow we have all of our data sets, the super important data. Um, Today could be super choppy. So seeing a lot of that chop. Nvidia is starting to pull back a little bit. So starting to see that occur. My short positions are not green yet, but any second now they will be in terms of Nvidia. Bitcoin continuing to see this breakdown, potentially seeing a head and shoulders forming on this 5 minute time frame. So that would be indicative of, everything we've been discussing for the morning. Semiconductors losing that 20 mile range. That's very good for our short positions. can be creating a head and shoulders on the day as well. Even though we originally were looking for this one, we talked about how this structure right here could pretty much be played out already. Now we can be trying to form new structure here. So potentially that's what's occurring. Still a little too soon to say. Our VVIX is extremely elevated still. I know that's literally what I've been saying all morning, but um, as long as this thing is above 98, selling can pretty much take off at any time. We had a perfect example of that the other day where we went from the 102 to the 100, basically right at the 100 range, and from that 100 we just started flying. So it's always a concern when it is above that 98. Yes, I did. I entered the puts on SPY. Still holding them. Still looking for quite a bit further downside. Again, we're seeing a lot of signals that are telling us that very, very likely we will be seeing SPY pulling downward. And look at the DXY. This is a signal we're looking for within the day to suggest bearishness, even though generally the dollar pulling down would be bullish. The dollar pulling down in the current narrative is highly, highly suggestive that the Bank of Japan is trying to unwind positions. So be aware of that. We're not seeing major buying within the yen yet, so potentially still within that phase of trying to sell securities, trying to gather up dollar, and eventually we'll transition into buying the yen. So just have to wait for that to occur. Seeing the USD pull down slightly, but that's very likely because we saw the DXY pull down. A lot of good signals for our short positions still though. Yeah, I have the 683 puts, and I also have 682 and 681 going. So just a little bit on the lower edge as well. That way, if we do start having a major sell-off, we can start trimming some of those higher positions without having to really risk completely cutting off our profit. The ADL is very, very shaky here, even on the 5-minute time frame. So on the 30-minute time frame, that's not strong at all. Again, a lot of weakness within our equities right now. Looking for TLT to continue buying to the upside. Looking for QQQ to lose this level. Check out Microsoft. Is pulling back from that upper Bollinger. Gig, we are starting to see a little bit of selling, but again, nothing speaking to us massively here just yet. Seeing that head and shoulders still forming within Bitcoin, so that is good. Seeing money enter into defensives. That's generally good for equities, in terms of being in a short position anyway. Starting to see our pull down in MicroStrategy. So again, I took the Mastix $2 puts. So if we continue to see that weakness within MicroStrategy, if we continue to see the head and shoulders within Bitcoin, then those positions will pay out very, very well. Looking for Nvidia to start losing this upper Bollinger range on the 5-minute time frame. Looking for QQQ to really start pulling down to that 20 MA and rejecting to the downside. And we're seeing good quality bearish structure here within semiconductors. Potentially we can be forming this inverse cup to the downside all the way to the 351.77. That would be very, very bearish. And that would also cause SPY very likely to pull down to the low of the day, which that's truly what we're looking for here. We're looking for that pull down to the low of the day and to start pushing below that level. BVIX is telling us that volatility is still extremely present, so everything in terms of our signals so far looking very good across the board. We're just waiting. Starting to see SPY lose that 20 mile level. I might need to AFK like 2 minutes here and get some more coffee. Just so I don't end up falling asleep on you all. That's cool, I didn't know that did that. That's interesting. I really like Weeble. Anyway, continue looking for SPY to lose this 20 mile range. Ideally, forming this inverse cup to the downside. Semiconductors are showing continuation within that structure. As long as we don't have a bounce here, then we won't be creating a cup and handle to the upside. If we do have that bounce, then that can be indicative of that, but so far we are really looking to fill out this downside. Looking for TLT to buy. Now the 5-minute ADL on TLT looks terrible, so really no major signal on that. The ADL on buy is starting to look pretty gross, which for a short position, that's a good thing for us. We're wanting to see the ADL pull downward. Looking for IWM to continue losing that level. And our gold positions are doing extremely good. FXY are really not seeing any buying. Dollar, we're seeing a head and shoulders starting to form. Again, I'm really attributing this to accumulation, so I'm really expecting to see this pull downward with the market. And the reason why is I'm expecting people to be selling off securities, getting a plethora basically of dollars in hand, and being able to then, push that into the yen, push that into treasuries, all that good stuff. Seeing continuation of that head and shoulders, looking very good so far. I am looking for the yen to start buying up pretty soon here now that we are seeing the DXY pulling downward. Micron's a little bullish here, so we are expecting overall semiconductors to be bearish. So ideally, we do want to see Micron starting to reject here. Same for Nvidia. We do have some short positions going. Have to be very, very cautious that this again can be that cup and handle bounce. So I'm still bearish on the market right now. Still holding my short positions. Now, today's the type of day, even though we don't have data and everything really driving overall narrative and sentiment, today's the type of day where very, very likely, even if we see SPY starting to push upward, um, I will just hold my short positions. And the reason why is again, with the VVIX so very elevated, this can trigger selling pretty much at any given time. And we've seen that occur many, many, many times. The best example that I have of recent is when we saw right in this range, we saw the VVIX basically opened at that 106 and it pulled down all the way towards the 100 and it was looking like it was wanting to pull down towards the safer range below the 98 to really suggest that we were going to be seeing some buying within the upside, but second it hit that $100 range, it just started flying. So, um, as long as this is above that 98 range, it can absolutely create those extremely bearish conditions within the SPY. So, I will be holding my short positions. I can't obviously suggest that to everybody. Um, if you're losing money on short positions right now and cannot afford to, continue to lose money on that, then obviously you have to close those out. Seeing the USD JPY pulling downward. It's a good thing, but very likely again that pulled downward because we saw the DXY pulling down. Still working on that head and shoulders. See how on the ES we had that head and shoulders this morning basically invalidate, not really invalidate. I mean, it did take us to that lower level, but from that lower level, that became a buying range, currently working to create new structure off of that range. So that's why I'm really looking at this as potentially that larger inverse cup. Um, but again, I can't ignore that there is the potential for that upside here as well. We could be forming a bullish cup and handle to the upside. Seeing a little bit of buying within HIG, so that can be indicative of buying to the upside. But again, I still see tons of bearish conditions throughout the market, so I will be holding my short positions. Um, And just understand, I'm completely fine with my short positions basically burning to zero here. When I scalp, I don't put money that I can afford to lose. Um, this isn't how I build the majority of my account. My 0 DT scalps are trades that are just going to help pad the account. So, not betting the farm here. But that's why I'm willing to let these short positions basically burn to zero. Um, with all the bearishness that I see present on the day, um, very, very willing to do so. Yes, I'm still holding. Basically, I'm going to be holding those puts until we see, um, a major signal that we're going to be seeing buying to the upside, which I don't really see yet. So far, we're seeing a lot of chop. Um, and we still have some, potentially very, very bearish conditions. And as long as those are persistent, then I'm not going to be trying to, load the boat and chase this potential buying. I just don't see the trend being there yet. Doesn't mean I'm correct though. Obviously, this could be forming a very, very bullish trend, and I could be incorrect about that. But so far, um, I am seeing a lot of this bearishness. Looking into silver calls. Let's see, silver. Silver is kicking butt since we bought that dip. I'm super happy we bought that dip the other day. That's why I mentioned every time we get below this 20 mile range, it's always a really, really, really strong buying opportunity for the upside, even though we can still potentially pull down towards that lower Bollinger, and this is on the daily time frame. But this is why I like the equity position rather than trying to take the calls to the upside here. If we pushed into that lower Bollinger, then I would take calls to the upside because generally when we push into the lower Bollinger, we won't see a continuation of that push downward. But with this current range, I do really, really, really like the equity positions. I didn't let it go to zero. No, I usually don't do that with the majority of my contracts, but on days like today where I just see a ton of bearish conditions, it's kind of like yesterday, right? Um, Yesterday we entered, but it's basically right at that top range. We did start entering a little early, because we started pushing into the upper Bollinger. Hold on, let me pull up actual 5 minute time frame from that day. So we started entering puts when we pushed basically up into the I want to say the upper range of the 686, if I remember correctly. Basically right at this range, we started to take puts. We pushed even further upward, and I still said that the VVIX was extremely elevated. We were seeing a lot of bearish conditions still, even though the buying was very, present. We held those puts all the way through that consolidation range. We weren't seeing signals changing to suggest that there was going to be major buying to the upside. Um, and those puts ended up paying out extremely, extremely well because, I was willing to hold those to zero basically because the conditions were bearish and I didn't see the conditions bullish enough to continue pushing. With that upper Bollinger being pushed in there, I really liked holding the puts. So that's kind of what I'm seeing out of today is we're seeing a lot of chop. However, the conditions overall are still extremely bearish. Um, Even with the VVIX pulling downward slightly, It's kind of like in yesterday where they pull that up, where actually pull up the correct time frame, where we saw the VVIX pull up, it started pulling back down, and then we saw that major push upward. So might have been this day. It's hard to tell within the VVIX because it doesn't really show the candles. It was here. We saw the VVIX pull up to the 108, and basically it was sitting here losing steam for the majority of the day. As you remember, it closed at the 104, but it pulled down to that 104, shot back up to the 107, and that's what gave us that exit on that short position, and then pulled back down, closed up the 104. So ideally, we're looking for that pushback up within the VVIX, but with it still being extremely elevated, it can create that condition where, you know, selling basically, excuse me, can occur at any given time within, on the SPY. So ADL on the 5 minute time frame still weak, still just not seeing a lot of, major buying signals just yet. On the 30 minute time frame, we do have a break in our buying channel here too. I wonder if today is one of those days where the dealers are just selling butterflies into the market. Looking for Bitcoin to hold downward, but again, seeing a lot of this potential bullish cup and handle forming throughout Bitcoin and tech. You really need to see semiconductors lose this 355 range. It's really what the market's waiting on is a major rejection down in semiconductors. We do see Nvidia, if I can find it. We do see Nvidia holding some strength today, but overall, it's still within a bearish posture, especially with this upper Bollinger push on the 5 minute time frame. That does create the short entry, so overall, just seeing a lot of chop though. That fits with the narrative of the day. We don't really have any additional data coming out. Continuing to see this head and shoulders within the DXY. Bit of a head and shoulders within Oracle as well. QQQ just tapering. We do want to see buying within TLT. Buying within TLT will be indicative of the Bank of Japan unwinding positions. So we're not seeing that just yet. We're not seeing major buying within the FXY just yet either. So not really seeing that the Bank of Japan intervening just yet. But all the conditions are there. UNG is a very good purchase right now with it being below the lower Bollinger. So, um, definitely looking at that one for equities. Again, we have this large up and handle on the day. Yes, we can pull down to the lower Bollinger. I don't really anticipate that. So I do like the buying to the upside on that. Netflix has been a buy since that lower Bollinger move. This is on the daily time frame, so we've been talking about equity buys within Netflix for a while. Looking for MicroStrategy and Bitcoin to continue out this right shoulder and pull downward. Very slow day though. It's an extremely choppy day so far. Surprisingly, my put contracts have been holding up extremely strong, even with some of this bullish price action. Seeing USD JPY pulling down. Really looking for semiconductors to lose this level. This will be the major indicator that, the market will get bearish on the day. Because that's pretty much what's holding the market up right now is, our few semiconductors and tech. Looking for this right shoulder to play out on Bitcoin. Apple still looks like a good short here. Having a head and shoulders on the daily time frame starting to form, so that short can start taking all the way down to the 243. So that would be a whole $20 move to the downside for Apple. Looking very strong. Super slow day. Very hard not to fall asleep. And again, I'm really not worried about the short positions. Um, yes, I am slightly red in a few of them. The ones that I took earlier at the 686 are green. Um, but the lower puts, the 682 and the 681 puts that I have right now are red. Um, Again, I'm holding on my puts. I see all the bearishness on the day, and I do expect it to truly continue and play out. Um, I do have to get my daughter up fairly soon here. So I will be ending the stream fairly soon. If there's anything anyone wants to go over, any symbols, any questions, anything like that, now is a very good time to ask, especially when it's a slower trading day. Seeing that head and shoulders within crypto still going on. Really want to see some selling within liquid here, but we just really need to see semiconductors lose that level first before I really think we start seeing the selling picking up. Starting to see that level being lost, but again, we want to see semiconductors really start pulling down all the way to the low third of the day. The VVIX has been still holding strong. Yes, it did have a little bit of choppiness within the day. It did pull down. Um, Truly, I'd want to see the VVIX lose at least another, $5+ to suggest bullishness on the day. Um, with the buying still here in the VVIX, this is still telling me that institutions are hedging positions and, expecting some downside. Wool and SAR. Okay, let's take a look at Webull. Weekly time frame, you still have a little bit of room downward. Not a whole lot. It's literally about 20 cents of downside. Um, so potentially that could be a quality buy. Now, from this last lower Bollinger on the weekly, we went all the way from the 769 up towards almost the basically the 1050 range, so a whole $3 move there. Um, Not that I'm expecting the same here, but potentially you can have that roughly $3 move to the upside. Now, on the daily time frame, I do still expect slightly more downside. We do have a little bit of a head and shoulders forming here. So really, really anticipating that push into the lower Bollinger on the daily time frame. Now, on the daily time frame, lower Bollinger is at 529. So even though on the weekly time frame it showed we had about 20 cents of potential downside, on the daily time frame, that's just showing us that we truly have about 60 cents um left of downside before we can really potentially start seeing buyers. Now, going over the moving averages, we have not seen the 5 mile pull upward above that 20 mile in over a month, almost a month and a half now. So this can start working its way up towards that 20 mile range if you see the buying, but we're not seeing buying yet. ADL is still pulling downward, so that's still indicating that money is leaving the symbol. So really, I would wait for that lower Bollinger on the daily time frame. That's going to be where you get your best purchases on the upside. Um, yes, Webull still does have some downside. For our time frame, you're seeing a little bit this bearish structure. Very, very indicative that likely we do see that push into the lower Bollinger. But again, lower Bollinger buys on the daily generally tend to be very, very profitable. As you can see, previous lower Bollinger took us from the 577 to the 703. So, dollar 30 in that move. This lower Bollinger move took us from the 796 all the way to again that 1039. So, whole roughly $3 move there. So, always try to buy the lower Bollinger moves. But overall, the trend has been obviously very, very bad on Webull. But I don't really anticipate it to continue down forever. A lot of these brokerages will trade downward until they finally hit their lowest support range, and then they hold that range and generally just trade around that range and slowly buy upward, eventually incorporating dividends and whatnot. Then we'll take a look at USAR, but I just want to look at options really quick. Again, we're really looking for QQQ, SPY, and semiconductors to lose that 20 mile range on the 5-minute time frame. BVIX is still extremely indicative that that will occur. Downside move is still looking very strong, just very, very choppy. So let's take a look at USAR. Okay. Daily time frame. Take a look at the weekly though. So on the weekly time frame, it looks very weak in terms of the ADL. Okay, so your ADL has just been dropping and dropping and dropping. It's actually within the negative on the weekly time frame, but that's not super, super important here. What is important, one moment, looking at everything. So of course this symbol hasn't had a lot of history to it. Um, which is a little difficult because as you can see, we literally don't even have a single lower Bollinger move in here. Um, at least on the daily time frame. No lower Bollinger moves here really, really indicates that we should be anticipating one. Which means that we should be anticipating a push downward because of that. Because we've had no lower Bollinger moves here, we actually have no clue how low this can push. Um, just going off of actual channels, and set some of these up. It's a very wide selling channel. Kind of what we're looking at on USAR. Now, we don't have bullish structure. We do have bearish structure forming, daily time frame. So this upper Bollinger push right here would have been a very, very, very good short. Very, very likely here we get this push into the lower Bollinger, which would be the first lower Bollinger push on USAR, with the lower Bollinger being at 1685. With seeing a lot of this consolidation around this 1430 range, I really do anticipate basically this inverse cup playing out and even pushing below that. So kind of in that area is really where I'm looking for a buy. Um, you really want to see this symbol push downward into this lower Bollinger on the daily time frame. Um, it's not a good thing that we haven't seen that because we've seen the top end of this symbol, but we haven't seen the bottom end of this symbol. Um, Potentially that bottom could be, extremely, extremely low. We also have with the ADL pulling down pretty aggressively here, we have the price holding a fairly strong range, which can be indicative that it will want to drop pretty hard. Um, with the ADL showing, significant money being pulled out of this, again, that's a very, very bearish signal. That's telling us that very likely we will be pulling downward. So I would be looking for, below that $14 range to pick up equities. I don't think this has options, does it? Okay, it does have options. I would not be taking options in this though. If you push up to the upper Bollinger again, I would be taking puts. But this isn't something I would be trying to engage in calls in. Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Okay, and then let's take a look at good old Getty. All right. Now, these channels don't hold a lot of weight because these are literally from like over a year ago. So I'm just gonna hide the drawings here. So just in terms of looking at areas of strength, we have extremely, extremely large consolidation range here. Prior to this push up. Now, for quantum, I'm extremely bearish on quantum. I don't believe in the technology one bit, and that's because I've had a decent amount of experience of looking into how the dynamics work on quantum, how quantum processes things. I don't see the future in current quantum computing. Okay. That does not mean that quantum computing can't be very profitable in the future. Um, but I think that the current quantum sector is not it. Okay. Would I be trying to buy calls for the upside? Not really. Um, I do think that potentially you could be seeing some equity weight that's worth buying here. I would want to push into that lower Bollinger prior to that, just because you've had this strong consolidation range prior to that, which, you know, this does tell me when we're consolidating that we have both buyers and sellers in this range. So the market likes to trade around this range. Okay. If we pull back to that range, if we get a lower Bollinger push into this area, then very, very likely, um, you know, as history has shown, it will trade between that range. So if we can get the low of that range, it'd be a very, very, very strong buying opportunity. I would not be trying to chase calls. I would not be trying to chase puts. Again, I'm not set on quantum. It's basically alien technology that isn't going to be something for selling to an actual customer for a very, very long time. It's R&D nightmare. Um, it has so much to go through before it's even close to ready. So when the market was really hyping it up and pushing it back then, I was very bearish on it. Even though I was not actively trying to short quantum, I know that I was very, very vocal in the sentiment that I don't believe in the sector at all. Um, I think that it's just a huge, huge R&D trap to investors. So, I'd be very cautious of quantum overall. It's not like AI where there's an actual application to it. Um, Quantum computers are very, very, very scientific machines in the fact that you basically have to build it for the purpose you're wanting to apply it to. So, for example, if I wanted to build a quantum computer to, I don't know, um, let's just say I wanted to map all the lights in my city and have a quantum computer do the math and everything on how to better time the lights for all the traffic and how to monitor actual traffic where if there is, congestion in this area, we have the lights swap more or swap less, things like that. I would have to specifically build a quantum computer directly tracking each and every one of those little things. Because of how much output a quantum computer gives, you have to, rather than find the answer, um, how do I explain this? Quantum computers are more so trying to extract the answer out of Pandora's box rather than being able to ask Pandora's box the question. Um, Being able to extract correct answers out of quantum machines is very, very, very hard because when you think about infinity, there's both positive infinity, negative infinity. Um, those answers can sit there and just keep pulling answers for you, even if it's not correct. Okay, it may not be the answer that you're looking for. So quantum computing is extremely, extremely um, not customer friendly. It's not like trying to set up AI um, to monitor traffic in that same example. AI would be able to recognize patterns, would be able to um, have more applications to pattern detection and correlations and things like that, where quantum computing is just sticking your hand in Pandora's box and reaching into infinity, and you have to be able to understand what you're reaching into and how to even correlate that data. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. It's just not a sector I like at all. It can be a sector that can be very, very good eventually, but currently it's just a nightmare. Still seeing all of our signals within SPY for the selling. We are seeing this head and shoulders starting to take form. You have the VVIX slowly starting to curve upward, which again, this I've been talking about this the entire day that with this being elevated, this buying can taper out. It can look very, very bullish, but all of a sudden that bullishness just, halts. Um, Really, we're seeing a lot of signals of that. MicroStrategy continuing that head and shoulders. So our puts should be doing very, very good. Not checked my phone yet. We talked about Korean DPST not doing so well today. We're seeing, the continuation of that. So again, that's another indicator that very, very likely we will be seeing selling within equities. Gold is doing very well. Pig is just holding. Junk is holding. And liquid seeing a little bit of buying. But within the actual time and sales on the shares, there's pretty equal weight in terms of the buying and selling, so not too worried about that. Nvidia still need to see continuation of this rejection and continuation of this bear structure. The ADL is forming this, head and shoulders right here, which some people might say you can't really chart the ADL, but I actually think you can. I've had a few trades where just for the heck of it, I've only looked at the ADL and not looked at the actual symbol itself and been able to navigate successful trades just through the ADL. So ADL, very, very important and good indicator. ADL here is telling us that NVIDIA wants to sell off. Our silver positions still doing very good. Semiconductors just chopping in here. TLT, we're seeing that buying. We want to see a lot more of it, obviously. That will be indicative that people are wanting to, de-risk slightly. VIX back above the 20. Not that I really look at the VIX. I look at the BVIX. Bitcoin looks like it's about to lose that level, which that'd be very good for our short positions overall. Microsoft has a very nice head and shoulders forming. So, um, one thing that I am concerned about is the 5-minute ADL pulling upward, but we don't see that on the 30-minute 1 hour time frame. We actually see it declining. So, um, this is just a little bit of noise right here, but this head and shoulders is very strong. Oracle, we do want to see pull down. Good morning. So for right now, I'm looking for the 682, basically just complete the low of the day. However, going over the daily time frame, we have our 5 mile currently at the 683.37. So if we can actually, break through the 5 mile, and I don't think we're having a successful 5 mile test here. I think that truthfully, we should see the 5 mile broken through and pushed downward. Um, if that's the case, then we can be seeing all the way down to the 681.20-ish range. Um, just if we're going to break through that 5 mile. Uh, if we're going to push well below that, then we could start trying to target this major gap at the 675. But first we have to break through the 5 mile. Once we crack that 5 mile range, then it really opens up. USD JPY is still pulling downward, but I'm not really seeing. Let's pull up the yen. Not really seeing major buying within the yen or anything right now just yet. So, um, not really seeing that correlation. I'm just seeing the dollar pulling downward, continuing this head and shoulders. Bitcoin, we want to see this continue downward. Our silver positions are doing very well. And again, we're truthfully just really waiting for semiconductors to fall off. That's really where a lot of the weight is within the market currently. Actually, pull up the heat map. And let's see. Da, 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 da. Do the 1 hour change. So on the heat map, we can see that semiconductors are doing very, very strong right now. Um, we have Broadcom up, we have, let's see, AMAT, we have Micron up. So yeah, we do need to see semiconductors pull back before we really see that pullback within, SPY and tech and everything else. Still just holding my puts though. Again, I still see a lot of signals for weakness today. We do see a little bit of buying within the HIG, which that can be a bullish signal. We do see a little bit of buying within liquid, which that can be a bullish signal that is telling us that, our upper echelons of corporate credit is holding okay. Generally, we would want to see, some of this weight shaking a little bit. Microsoft continuing to see that head and shoulders. NVIDIA, we really want to see this 20-mile range rejected to the downside because this can create a cup and handle if not. All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here unless there's any last questions. Uh, the expectations should be set for the day so far. Um, I'm still within my short positions. If we see the VVIX continue to pull downward, if we see, semiconductors not lose that level that they need to lose, then those short positions will burn. I'm completely okay with these short positions burning. Again, these are just cheap scalps for me. I'm not looking to have a lot of money into those positions at all. But we still see a lot of bearish signals throughout the day, so I will be holding those short positions unless um we see the conditions really change. So I'd want to see the VVX pulling down very, very aggressively. I would want to see TLT not buying upward. I would want to see TLT actually starting to sell because that would suggest that there's not going to be that hedging into um, you know assets that don't have risk basically. Semiconductors can push up to the upper Bollinger and reject. Now we are looking for liquid to really lose this level. Again, we're expecting liquid to pull back to the 110 range, so we're not really seeing major signals of either the buying or selling just yet. Dollar is still extremely elevated. Bitcoin potentially can be creating buying to this, upper range. I'm still within those MicroStrategy shorts, so still going to be holding those. I see a lot of conditions again for the bearishness, so happily holding those. All right, I will talk to you all in tonight's video. I did not get to make a video last night. I was just too exhausted. I've been moving my office around and everything, so apologize for that. But tonight there should be a video. Um, with that said, again, unless we see a major shift in the narrative, I'm going to be shorting here throughout the tech and semiconductors and everything. Um, but I'm just not seeing that signal yet. Tomorrow we have very, very key data, so very likely we see a lot of chop into that data set, so be aware of that. But tomorrow we do have the PC and GDP data in the morning, so I will be available for the stream for that, and we can go over that in real time. So, all right, take care, everybody. Um, Hopefully all of your trades go successful today. And again, I will be holding my short positions. If those burn to zero, I'm completely okay with it. So I will talk to you all tonight.